Hello, everyone. Welcome into the East Alabama Works video podcast series. I'm Carl Brady, Workforce Program Manager for East Alabama Works. We are the Regional Workforce Council for Region 2 here at East Alabama in the state of Alabama. And we welcome you all into today's video podcast. Recently, we talked about the Alabama Talent Triad, and we're going to get a little more in depth on that today. So I have a series of guests with me. We'll start off with Nick Moore. Nick is the with the Governor's Office of Education and Workforce Transformation. Nick, welcome.
Well, welcome.
Abigail Carter is with us. Abigail is with the Alabama Community College System.
Hi, thank you for welcoming.
John Palish joins us. He is with One Workforce Solutions as well. John, welcome in.
Thank you, Carl. Good to be here.
And with the Alabama Office of Personnel, we have Jackie Graham. And Jackie, I'll let you also introduce the other folks you have there with you.
I'm Jackie Graham, and we have Laurie Morgan. She is our newly appointed State Personnel Director. We also have Julie Carden here, and she is the manager over our Examinations Division. And we have Michael Earls here, and he is our favorite IT guy in the world and extraordinaire. So that's it for us.
Very good. Well, happy to have all of you here joining us today to talk about the Alabama Talent Triad. And just to give a quick review and overview, the Alabama Talent Triad is a new system here in Alabama to help to connect employers with job seekers and the education and training community to try to make sure people get connected with employers, get these connections together. And it brings together three different pieces to form the Talent Triad. The Alabama Credential Registry is a resource where we're getting credentials all registered and qualified so that people who earn their credentials can then have access to those, and employers have access to that information as well. The Alabama Skills-Based Job Description Generator and Employer Portal, or employers go on, and we can kind of put these skills-based job descriptions together more easily, and they'll be a little more concise across the board. And we're going to talk more about skills-based hiring and what that means as we come up on the show today. And we also have the Alabama College and Career Exploration Tool, or asset, where the community colleges and the four-year colleges and the training providers can put all of their information in. And as a job seeker puts their information in, and the system sees that they have another level of education or training that they can go to, it'll give them that information, and just puts all of this together into one program that is accessible online, and it has launched now. So Nick, would you like to kind of to add anything to that before we get started?
Sure. Well, first I want to just start by saying thank you, Carl, for allowing us to join you today to share a little bit more about the Alabama Talent Triad. This is something we're very excited about. The governor has been quietly working away for the last 5 years to deliver the nation's first full-scale talent development marketplace, and we think that it is both very timely and prescient given the fact that we are near full employment nationally and certainly in Alabama. And we also recognize that to increase the labor force participation rate, we've got to arm people with the skills they need to vouchsafe their capabilities in this labor market and leverage technology in a way that allows people to get the right dose of training, supportive services, and employment opportunities they need. You know, we've done a lot of survey work with Alabamians that have been unemployed and underemployed during the COVID-19 pandemic and recovery. And what folks are telling us is they're not turning away from paid employment or training, but what they do want is for us to meet them where they are and to help them make all learning count so that they can translate, transact, and transcribe all of their various learning assertions and awards, whether they're a veteran with a joint service transcript, whether they're someone that's been employed as a 1099 worker that's been self-employed, or somebody with traditional learning assertions, Carl, like your transcript or my transcript from college that tells us how many credit hours or Carnegie units, how much seat time we've spent. but not necessarily what those discrete competencies are that we earn. And that's not to say this system is in any way mutually exclusive from traditional learning. In fact, I think what we're doing is making two things clear. The academic and technical skills are complementary. They're not mutually exclusive. And we're also hoping to destigmatize career-connected learning, which has somewhat of a nefarious history in the country, with a history of tracking certain folks into pathways based on their demographics rather than their skill profile. So by leveraging technology that allows us to connect education to the economy, we're making a marketplace that's a large enough, the state being a political entity large enough to actually make enough space for employers to connect with students and job seekers, and that critical third leg of the audience that we're serving, the Triad, education and training providers, to reimagine the way that they're designing programs. So we're connecting job seekers and students based on skills, and we are getting education and training providers to think about how we structure education and training programs, not the train and pray model or build it and they will come, but building bespoke and customized programs that are directly aligned to the needs of employers.
And yet you mentioned the labor force participation rate, and that's something that we need to grow here in the state of Alabama. We're at 57% right now, and we need that to be larger. We need more people participating in the labor force. How do you guys see this as being a step toward helping to increase that?
Well, I think for one thing, Carl, if we think about folks that are outside the labor force, to Nick's point earlier, a lot of times those folks don't necessarily understand how to get back in the labor force. They don't know how to capture what it is they've done over their careers, not just degrees and not just certificate, but experiential learning. And Nick mentioned transitioning service members. I was at a conference in DC last week, and we were talking about my frustration with the fact that if I'm in the Army and I drive a M1 Abrams tank around Fallujah for 6 months, and then I come back to the United States and somebody tells me I can't drive an 18-wheeler on a highway, I want to say, are you serious? You're saying I don't have the skills to drive a heavy piece of equipment on a highway, yet I was driving a heavy piece of equipment in a war zone. And that's just one example. But what we're trying to do here, when we're talking about skills-based hiring, we're talking about credential registries, we're trying to get down to the core of what does the individual know. And oftentimes the individual doesn't know what they know because they've been told for so long that you have to have a degree and 2 years of relevant experience for this job. When in actuality, they need a set of skills, and they may have attained those skills in an industry completely different than the one that they're looking for a job in. And the clearer we can make that connection for them, the clearer that we can draw out that information of what they've done in the past, it really opens up the possibilities of where they can go next in their career. And they're not just stuck in this industry or in this sector. But if they realize that all of my experience and all of my training and education, I have a set of skills, and those skills are transferable in manufacturing and healthcare and IT and all these different sectors, that's what's going to drive that labor force participation rate up. And you mentioned 57%, and you're spot on. And the troubling thing to me is that's still below where we were pre-pandemic. So, right. We talk about all the jobs that we've regained through the pandemic. We haven't regained any jobs. We've just backfilled jobs. So now we've got to start to tease some of those labor pools, those forgotten workers out there, and try to get them back into the workforce. And the Triad is a giant front door for them to walk through that says, hey, we can make this transition easier for you.
We've mentioned skills-based hiring, and that's going to be a big topic that people are going to be hearing more and more about. And I always say when I'm speaking to civic clubs or groups or whatever, that we always emphasize that we're not devaluing that four-year education or that college degree, but we are saying that there's other things out there that can be valuable to the job seeker. And I use myself for an example of, whatever degree I may or may not have earned was 40 years ago. That was the beginning of my education process, not the culmination of my education process. The most important part of my process to me is the 32 years of experience I have in my job. and in my career. And so I'm happy that we're starting to look at it that way. Now, there are 14 other states who have already, their Office of Personnel have said, okay, we're taking that bachelor's degree requirement off of our job descriptions. Here in the state of Alabama, the Office of Personnel is participating in the talent triad. Can you guys speak to that and why the talent triad is going to help you guys out, and how you're handling that and requirement of a bachelor's degree as opposed to skills-based hiring?
We'll certainly try. First of all, thank y'all again for having us. We've been so excited to work with Nick and Greg and the rest of the group on this project. We like to refer to it as matchmaking. It's a matchmaking service for jobs. So that's something that's near and dear to our hearts, is to try to find that is match someone, a job seeker with that, with a job that's going to enable them to be successful. So we are very, like I said, we're still sort of, I believe we're in the beginning stages of implementation, but we're very excited about that. We have, as far as the skills base, that is something that we, as part of our process when we engage in our job analysis, the crux of that is identifying that, but with not just skills, but the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are necessary to perform a position. Then going from there, does this job really require that degree? And we're actually going through a process just right now of reevaluating some of our jobs and those requirements, to make sure that we are not unnecessarily screening out individuals. Because to your point about could there be some experiences that could maybe substitute for that formal education?
How do you see the talent
Yeah, and I think-
triad helping you guys? What's the advantage going to be for the state Office of Personnel, to be part of this talent triad?
Well, just to reiterate, that this is the matchmaking service, but when you think about the jobs with the state, that is just such a huge, we encompass everything from doctors, lawyers, painters, plumbers, engineers, accountants, and social workers, forensic sciences, and scientists, that I think just your average individual might just be, they don't even know where to start. I think it can be very overwhelming. So, and the way we are understanding this is going to help us is that individual has their wallet, or has provided their information, whether it's formal training or job experience or whatnot, and those skills, and hopefully the triad is going to be able to match or recommend jobs where this individual could apply that they would have never known in the first place. And and it's just, I think the possibilities are just limitless. Of getting our positions in front of individuals who might have never have even considered a job with the state, didn't even know that job existed within the state.
And I think anytime we talk about skill-based hiring, and I couldn't support the initiative more. I want to give the folks in personnel a little bit of latitude here. Yes, they're the front line, if you will, on this. But having spent the last 20 years in government, I know oftentimes when a position becomes vacant, the hiring manager dusts off the old position description and sends it over to personnel and says, I need another one of these. I need another senior program manager or deputy director or this, that, the other thing. And the hiring manager isn't necessarily thinking, well, these are the skills that I need. And we can't just look to the personnel folks alone to take a position description that talks about, needing a degree and 2 years of relevant experience and backing that into the actual skills that are needed for that position. So I would encourage all of those folks who have staff working for them, with them, and underneath them to really look at those positions and say, what are the skills? I know it says senior program manager or deputy director or whatever the position title is, but what are the actual skills I need? That's where we're going to get the right type of individual in the position. If we start thinking about skills and what makes up a deputy director, what are the communication skills, the collaboration, program knowledge, what are the things that they need? And then we can really start to push towards skill-based hiring. We can really start to leverage the asset system and the learning and employment records and all those other things that Nick and his team are building around this, it really starts with that, that fancy term of skills taxonomy. What are the skills that we're talking about? And can we all start talking in the same language? And that's where the credential registry and the LER comes in, because even if across the Alabama systems, we start using the same names for skills, we start talking about the same types of competencies. Now we've got something to really start that matchmaking process that they're talking about, really lining up skills, not just, a degree. Well, this person got a degree and it looks like they've worked in the same program for 2 years, so they must be ready to move up. There's a principle out there called the Peter principle that allows individuals to continue to be promoted until they become basically stuck because they don't have the skills to go forward. Well, we don't want to do that. We want to constantly be evolving, constantly delivering and allowing for people to acquire new skills so they can keep moving forward, and that we can really tighten up that match. And one of the more frustrating things for any hiring manager is bringing someone on and then 6 months later realizing, wow, this isn't a good match. They don't actually have the skills I need. Now I got to decide, am I going to try to upskill John, or am I going to get rid of John and start that whole process over again? We want to take that out of the equation. We want to make sure that there's a real match and that hiring manager knows, hey, this person has all the skills I asked for.
There are a lot of states that are talking about skills-based hiring, and the conversation is going on. But here in Alabama, we've done more than just talk about it. We're actually leading the country in developing the skills-based hiring programs. What was that impetus? Why is Alabama leading the way and so adamant about making this work?
Well, I think it's of existential necessity, and it took leadership of the governor working with our legislature and our employer community to see the forest through the trees and strategically see that we had to address post-secondary attainment and labor force participation together. If only 46% of our population have a credential, only 57% of the population are working, but 90% of the jobs that we're recruiting in the state require some form of a post-secondary credential. Not just bachelor's degrees, but apprenticeships, occupational licenses, certifications, certificates. And then also we recognize that out of 100 of our graduating class every year, out of 100 graduating seniors, 6 years after they graduate, only 24 of those individuals have a bachelor's degree. We've got to do something to make sure that each of the other 76 out of that graduating class is able to enter into one of those in-demand jobs that we're recruiting every day that does require a post-secondary credential 9 times out of 10. And also we recognize that you can't just convene employers in one-off meetings and expect that that's going to validate the skills taxonomy that Mr. Palish alluded to. You have to have organized sectoral partnerships. And in Alabama, we codified those. We call it the Alabama Committee on Credentialing and Career Pathways. And it's co-chaired by our state superintendent and the chancellor of our 2-year college system. And there's 7 members of business and industry in each of the 16 sectoral partnerships, and they're supported by a cadre of subject matter experts from the education and training providers that help Sherpa what the employers consider to be the jobs that are attached to each of our in-demand jobs. And we create essentially the DNA of those in-demand jobs. So we have a standard list of state and regional in-demand jobs, the competency and qualifications frameworks that go along with those, plus some nuance into what we consider to be the skill shape of those jobs. So that way we can organize jobs into career pathways that aren't sort of the wooden ones that we're used to seeing of CNA to LPN to RN, but we can understand what are the durable skills that could give somebody the most utility in the labor market vertically and laterally across different career pathways.
What kind of information are we sharing with other states? As the leader of the pack in this, I know that other states have been reaching out to us to learn about what we're doing. What kind of information are we sharing, and how are we helping other folks to get this launched?
So we don't want the Triad to be a unicorn, and commuting patterns don't respect state lines. And so we're working with a dozen or more other states, and we've got support from NGA and the Walmart Foundation to help allow other states to choose their own adventure from a spectrum of adopting the ontology to even adopting all of the different pieces of the Alabama Triad solution. And I know there's a lot of innovative programs that, for example, the community college system is doing around taking those qualification frameworks that we've made and standardizing those into new training programs that I know a lot of other states are emulating. For example, the ACE and MAP credential. Each of our qualifications frameworks is standardized what a lot of people would call the ready to work competencies, academic, workplace, and personal effectiveness skills. And the college system has made a new credential called the Alabama Certified Employer Credential that helps somebody demonstrate mastery of those ready to work skills. And then each industry sector has a credential called a MAP, or Mobilizing Alabama's Pathways, that are what we call tier 4, are the sector specific skills. So, and I know we've got Dr. Carter here, so she may have a little bit more about how the college system is expanding those new programs in the state and how they're being picked up elsewhere.
Okay, hi. We at Alabama Community College is so excited about the opportunities we're having because finally, we know we're not the only partner when it comes to training skilled workers, but we play a very important part into that. And now we can create a curriculum and pathways based on the skill sets and make sure that we all use the same, like John was saying, we all use the same terminology, because our students graduate and sometimes they don't seek jobs because they don't understand what a job description is about. So this actually helped them so much. And we're so glad to have the opportunity to work with the state, our personnel, and all of the employers that are hiring our students to make sure we understand what they want from the students and that we make sure the students are taught those things.
The ACCS
And the system should be a, well,
I'm sorry, go
Carl, I
ahead,
was just
John.
going to say that the system should be applauded for that, because I have some experience in other states, and oftentimes educators aren't so willing to embrace change like this, especially when you're talking about, hey, I've been teaching this course for X number of semesters and I got it down tight, really don't want to change my curriculum, don't want to change my syllabus. I like the way it is. Being more responsive to employers and what they need, that's a huge step forward. So I don't want to skip over that point, that the fact that the education that's being delivered in the community college system is actually evolving and tied to what's happening in the real world, that doesn't exist across higher ed. I can assure you of that.
Yes, we want to shorten that period because a lot of times to create a curriculum takes years and years. And by that time, that job is totally changed. They're not hiring, or people are not hiring for that type of position. So we want to make sure we can respond in a fast-paced manner.
And that was going to be the point I was making with ACCS and the community colleges that we work with at East AlabamaWorks are extremely responsive. It's an amazing partnership that when we go to one of our community colleges and pass along some information from an employer, they immediately get to work and we start collaborating and working on how can we do what this employer needs and bring the students in and turn them into qualified employees or potential employees. And the ACCS is a tremendous partner, and skills training, technical training, and all of that stuff. And we really appreciate what our partnerships with ACCS. How does the triad and this discussion of skills-based hiring trickle down into the K-12 system, our high school CTE programs, and how does that relate to the high school programs?
Well, I know others probably have some thoughts on this, but just to share very quickly that the vision for this is that if we're going to get a new paradigm around talent development that looks at skills as the unit of transaction rather than proxies for learning, credit and seat time and Carnegie units, those are just ways of describing learning, but not really in their purest form, which is actually skills. Credentials are just the wrapper. But right now we're trying to make the currency what is just a proxy or the wrapper. So that's why getting students even as early as 5th grade, which we can do now under Perkins 5, to begin career exploration, earning digital credentials and competencies, making their talent triad wallet. So not the new permanent record. This is all based on self-sovereignty principles, so that as a learner earner progresses through their journey, they get to determine what skills they decide to place on their wallet. But I think one thing that's been an indelible feature about the American experience throughout our history, and certainly something that Governor Ivey wants to see remain true, is that of mobility, economic, social, geographic. And we've got to make sure that people have the opportunity to take the risk to start that business, to be able to move and not be able to fear that they're going to lose, maybe a housing voucher, which allows them not to be able to take a chance on the next job, or to work more hours because they don't have to fear about losing, particular benefit. But all that starts at the K-12 level. And if you think about how we can also use technology like this to help personalize learning in a way that doesn't just mean that to differentiate instruction, the teacher has to work nights and weekends and holidays and every moment to be able to provide that personalized learning experience for a student. We can leverage competency-based learning using tools and technology solutions like the Triad to, make things like generative AI actually help in the classroom, to have every student earning or learning rather at their own pace in a mastery or competency-based way, and for data to be informing classroom instruction so that students can look, or teachers and students can look at formative data, make shifts in practice that help not just that student, but the whole class. So I think although the workforce and higher ed space is where there's the most attention on learning and employment records and competency-based education, the most long-term, I think, growth and potential actually is in the K-12 space. And there's a lot of people talking about competency-based education and in the K-12 space, but I think the shift that has not happened yet is what we're doing with the Triad, which is having a more demand-based focus. We still have all of the people that work within education, which, I'm one of them. So, not talking in a pejorative way, but you've got to have the demand side and employers working to help us define what the competencies are. And I think once that begins to happen, we'll see a lot more competency-based learning begin to metastasize at the K-12 level too.
And Carl, if I can just put a point on the importance of that, I'm a little bit of a data guy at heart. And if we take a look across the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, the big workforce legislation, WIOA, on average, about 3,400 people in Alabama in a year get a credential under WIOA. Alabama's high schools graduate 42,000 students a year. So if we just put that in perspective, if we can graduate 42,000 high schoolers who are ready to go to work tomorrow, and not all of them are going to go to work. Some are going to go to a 2-year degree, 4-year degree, apprenticeship program, military, all different. But if we just think it at the base level, if those 42,000 were ready to go to work, that's 12, 13 years worth of WIOA credentials in 1 year. And that's going to happen every year coming out of high school. So you really touched on a point near and dear to my heart, which is how do we address the pipeline coming into the workforce? And that starts with high schoolers. That starts with K through 12. Yes, we're always going to have to upskill certain individuals. There's going to be changes in commuting patterns, as Nick mentioned. Industries are going to come and go. People are going to have to get upskilled. But if we're not addressing those 42,000 students graduating from high school every year, we're going to be bailing water all the time trying to keep up. Because like I said, WIOA is going to give you 3,500 credentials a year. So we have to hit it at the source, and that's students coming out. That's piquing their interest early. That's getting them into career exploration. That's getting them skills. That's getting them dual credit. All the different tools that we have available. Let's expose them to all that and see what they want to do when they graduate from high school.
John, you're correct. And I think you're going to see a lot more of the ACCS colleges working with the dual enrollment, getting deeper into the dual enrollment and starting as early as we can and giving them as many credentials as they can before they graduate from high school.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned dual enrollment. Dual enrollment has been a powerful tool to get high school students to go ahead and get into some of the career technical programs at their local community college, and I think it's been great for our students and for the training system overall. The Talent Triad has launched. We had a pilot period. The system has launched. It's now available, and it looks like we've got already almost 20,000 users in high school, community college, and adult education. We've got more than 40 employers that have already signed up and are using that. How did we get the word out? How do we get such a good response for an initial launch like that?
Well, number one thing to know is our single point of entry is AlabamaWorks.com. And you can go on there right on the homepage and sign up in 5 minutes for a wallet if you're a student, job seeker, earner, learner. If you're an employer, if you're having trouble sourcing or retaining talent, or if you're one of those that happens to find themselves in the middle of this paradox where there's a help wanted sign on just about every door. But then at the same time, as we survey people, folks are telling us they don't know where or how to connect with employment opportunities. We want to help you. So please visit Alabama Works, sign up for an employer account, and we want to begin connecting talent with opportunity and get you those employees that we know you are so desperately in need of at this point. And to our education and training providers, in light of Act 29 or 2023 365, the Credential Quality and Transparency Act, we want to make sure that you've got all of your credentials, whether they're degree credentials or non-degree credentials, registered so that everybody can understand how to take advantage of those opportunities that you have. So you can also go to talentplaybook.org to see the marketing collateral that EBSCO has put together for the Alabama Talent Triad. And if you're someone that wants some assistance in figuring out how to best engage your target population with the Triad, please reach out to us. And you can do so through talentplaybook.org, and we'd be happy to set up a time with you to provide some concierge service.
And you can also reach out to your local regional workforce council. We all of the regional workforce councils around the state are pretty well versed in the Talent Triad and how to help our employers get started on that. And the more employers participate and they add in the competencies and the skills and the things that they need, the better the whole system works. Is that correct?
You nailed it, Carl.
Well, in addition to increasing the labor force participation rate, what are some of the other goals of the Triad? We see how it's going to help get some more people into the workforce, but what are some of the other goals of the Talent Triad that we're looking to achieve?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is the UI work search program. So right now, and Mr. Palish, since he ran this old system at the federal level for several years, can add to this and correct me if I misspeak here, but people have to, by federal law, people apply for jobs that are available and suitable to them, and the state determines what cadence is the minimum. And in Alabama, you've got to apply for 3 jobs a week in order to be to remain in the unemployment program week to week. So what if rather than somebody having to apply for 3 jobs, they could apply for 500 jobs that they are qualified for based on a skills match with the click of one button? So that's the potential for the Triad. Or what if everybody that has these critical lifelines like SNAP or TANF or Medicaid was able to look at the Triad and our other solution that we work with the Federal Reserve, David, to help mitigate benefits cliffs, and understood when they would reach self-sufficiency, what recommended trainings would help them reach their next opportunity, and to have a little bit more peace of mind to be able to take a chance on work rather than fearing the loss of benefits to the point that work may not pay. So we also think that we can make some of the legacy systems and intake and assessment in the public workforce system catch up to 21st century. And we want to modernize our public workforce system so that we've got less brick and mortar, less paper and pencil, and more digital service delivery. And except for, the maybe 5 to 10% of people that just don't want to, or maybe need some adaptive technology needs, everybody has one of these. And so we need to get more of our public workforce system onto the cell phone, and certainly the Triad is mobile friendly. And if you go around our public workforce center system, the one place that you can't go and get on unemployment is in the career center. You got to do that on your phone and digitally. So if we're able to do unemployment digitally, then why should we not be able to do training in the same way?
Any final
And I
thoughts
think
from anyone? John, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I wanted to drill down a little bit on what Nick was saying, because I think as we move forward in 2023 and beyond, the idea of using technology to be better at our jobs, to be more efficient, to be more effective at our jobs. Again, if we go back to the WIOA system in Alabama, it serves about 8,000 people a year. Right now, there's 138,000 job openings in Alabama alone. There's only 10,000 people on unemployment. So to Nick's point, at the very least, we should be able to match those 10,000 individuals who are receiving an unemployment check up with any number of those 138,000 jobs that are open. But even beyond that, we've got to expand that net wider. If we're going to drive up labor force participation, if we're going to be responsive to employers, we've got to fill more of those 138,000 jobs, and we can't do it the way we've been doing it. So by leveraging technology, by leveraging what Nick's talking about with work search and skills matches, and taking this out of the hands of somebody having to do it and creating a system that will do it for me, that will present the jobs to me. Hey, John, these are the jobs that are suitable employment for you. Again, they might be jobs I wasn't even thinking about because I'm not necessarily thinking along the lines of skills. And if the system can open my eyes to more opportunities, then we've got more people going back to work. We've got more people getting back into the workforce. We've got fewer job openings. We've got economies growing. We've got communities prospering. Everybody's happy. Rainbows and unicorns for everybody. So that's where we're trying to go with this. And I really applaud the governor and Nick in terms of what they want to do with this, because we've got to attack this problem head on. So kudos to the state. And I just think there's nothing but good things ahead if we realize the potential here and really lean into it and embrace it. I think it's going to do great things.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of information in this half hour or so that we've been talking. Anybody have any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to add before we go? Well, all right, then. Thank you very much for participating in this video podcast with us here on East Alabama Works. And folks, we thank you for watching and listening to the podcast as well. And we'll see you next time.